Okay, y'all, so as I'm recording this, I came across a movie that's called Spell. It's a horror mystery, and it's based around hoodoo and voodoo. Now, this man's plane I haven't seen it. I just watched the trailer, and it said this man's plane crashes, and he's supposed to come for his father's funeral, but he ends up in a different place with a woman who does rituals. So, watch this.
Now, I got a little something here that'll help you get better. This is my latest and greatest boogie tea.
What is that?
A boogie tea. You ain't never heard of a boogie tea? It's one thing standing for another. Now this, it stands for you. And the more it
it's time to go. I get that you stranded and you don't know where. Get out of there. Get out of there. Get out of there.
resembles you with blood, nail clippings, hair, a pinch of semen. Then, the more it is you, the more good things happen to it. The more good things happen to you.
So, y'all, I'm just trying to figure out why we didn't know that this movie existed. Like, see, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know about that one. See, I just, Okay, so it says, while flying to his father's funeral in rural Appalachia, see the Appalachian Mountains. I already did a video on that one. You already know what's going on over there. An intense storm causes Marcus to lose control of his plane, carrying himself and his family. He's soon awakened, wounded, alone, and trapped in Miss I don't know her name, attic. Eloise claims she can nurse him back to health with the hoodoo figure she made from his blood and skin. Unable to call for help, Marcus desperately tries to break free from her dark magic and save his family from a sinister ritual before the rise of the blood moon. Child, I don't see why this movie didn't get much promotion. I don't even know what this movie, I've never heard of this movie ever. And it looked like it got some good actors in it. Okay, let's move on. Here's another movie. I have not seen it yet.
Hey, do y'all remember that movie, The Skeleton Key? Man, I'm telling you, this is one of the most slept on movies of the 2000s, bro. And I feel like it would have been bigger if it was marketed a little bit better. Because the movie was presented like it was this crazy voodoo style horror movie, when really it was like a southern gothic mystery thriller. So it was kind of miscategorized. So I feel like when people saw it, they was expecting a little more than what they got. Because that's exactly how I felt. However, I still walked out of that movie theater very pleased when I saw it back in the day. The movie follows this girl named Caroline, who's a nurse in New Orleans, and she gets really into her job. You know what I'm saying? She really cares about her patients. Well, she ends up taking this job for this elderly woman to help her with her husband, who's supposedly dying. The house is this big old school mansion somewhere out in the bayou. Now, while Caroline is there, she starts noticing that stuff is not exactly 100% what's being presented. She gets a little too curious. She starts snooping around, and then she finds some real dark shit going on. As the mystery unfolds, she finds out that this old woman is not what she claims to be. Her husband also isn't who he appears to be either, but he's still very much a victim. And that lawyer dude that was helping him out with the whole thing, is something up with him too. And what I really loved about this movie is that the ending, it wasn't no happy ending.
Y'all, from what I'm seeing, it looks like the woman, I don't know, because the eye looks like a slave plantation. So I don't know what the heck is going on in that movie, but, you know, that's something that y'all can watch.
Jordan Peele's Us shows us that we can be our own worst enemy. When the tethered show up, they choose violence after years of being repressed. I think the man who coined the term the shadow said it best when he said that your shadow does not disappear by repressing it. It only revolts. You can see that in the movie Us when each person has to battle their own tethered. Each time Zora's battling her tethered, it's always around cars, which is the thing that she gave up the old part of herself for. Gabe's always battling his tethered around the boat, which is the thing that he uses to represent his masculinity. But Jason is different. He's the only one in the family that does not physically have to battle his shadow. That's because Jason realizes that his shadow, Pluto, is only mirroring him, that he can keep it in check when he realizes that it's a part of him. And that's why I think he's the only one in his family to win out against his shadow without using force. Did you notice this spiritual message in Jordan Peele's movie Us? In the movie, each tethered represents the shadow self, which is basically the part of you that you're ashamed of. So you neglect it and it gets pushed into your subconscious behaviors. But what's the deal with all of them holding hands? Well, I think that this is representative of the collective unconscious, which is basically the part of the subconscious that isn't created by any of our personal experiences, but it's inherited by what the society we enter into already is. If you enter into a society that glorifies a certain unrealistic body image, you may enter into a community that has a collective shadow side of having low self-esteem. Understanding the idea of the collective unconscious will help give you the perspective that we are different, but we are also very much alike.
Okay, so it does make a lot of sense that your shadow self is your repressed version. Let's just hear her out some more.
Understanding how the shadow self is created will help you to stop self-sabotaging. I always hear people saying, do your shadow work, but what does that really mean? Jordan Peele's movie Us is the best metaphor for understanding the shadow self duality and the inner civil war that we have with ourselves before we recognize our shadow traits. Put this down on YouTube fully with clips of the movie, so you can consider this like a short summary. The shadow self is a touchy subject, and that's because most of us aren't really even aware that it exists until you find yourself on any type of path of enlightenment. It could be personal growth.
Bro, I didn't even peep that how the fun house said find yourself. That's crazy.
Healing trauma, spiritual awakening, working through limiting beliefs. Same way Addie does when she finds herself in the room of funhouse mirrors, where she becomes aware of the duality of man. Basically meaning that we are both the things that we love and the things that we don't. And rejecting certain traits pushes them into your subconscious.
Hear that? Rejecting certain traits pushes them into the subconscious. And then what do you know? They start creeping up on you and wanting to off you. This is why people go crazy. This is why people have breakdowns. And this is why shadow work is really important, because repression is not a healthy thing. Energy must be dealt with and it will manifest. So you have to be very careful with yourself and with how you perceive yourself. Spiritually, that movie is telling you to face the feelings and the emotions that you have at present, because if you don't, it'll become something worse. It's crazy because I didn't see it from that perspective. That is your shadow self. I thought it was just like a clone. So do you remember how everybody's repressed subconscious energy was underground and they were like literally all just in this tunnel? This is a physical manifestation of your shadow self, and because you have been repressing it for so long, it's only choosing violence at this point.
How it must have been to grow up with the sky, to feel the sun, the wind, the trees. But your people took it for granted. We're human too, you know.
You know what I think? I think the white rabbits that they were showing, you know how in Alice in Wonderland you follow the white rabbit and you get to see like the subconscious, you go down the rabbit hole, you get to see the real energy of what's been going on. That the rabbits have a symbolism as well. This is I wasn't even thinking this deeply as I was watching the movie. I was just, paying attention to the plot. Spiritually, this has a lot of messages.
What's a movie that you look at differently with an adult set of eyes?
Celie was always the most powerful, which is why everybody else around her wanted to make her feel up. They wanted to make her feel stupid, and they kept on abusing her. I knew from a young age when I was watching this movie that the people around Celie saw a light within her, and they knew it was going to turn into a flame one day. So they were trying to put out any hope possible. But with her letters to God, and when she met Suge, having that female energy that's not competitive or demeaning breathe life into you when everybody around you who's supposed to love you has demeaned you, reawaken Celie's power that she always had. Celie is pretty much like a flower. You know what they say about flowers? You can't grow new shit on the same grounds that poisoned you. And that's everybody around her. And especially in this movie, black spirituality is alive and flourished. Celie binds her husband up a couple times towards the end. She says, until you do right by me, everything you think about will crumble, cursing him to reap what he sowed. And when she says everything you've done to me has already been done to you, those three fingers are a curse, cursing you under the Trinity of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Okay, for one, I do remember her doing that, and I did not know that she was cursing him. Man, what if she was Gullah Geechee?
Okay, y'all, it's time to talk about what really happened in Eve's Bayou. Now, y'all know I wouldn't be the Queen Poe if I didn't talk about the spiritual aspects of the movie first. Now, there was a lot of spiritual gifts that were shown in Eve's Bayou, but a lot of people don't realize the first spiritual gift that we was exposed to was Eve's. Now, after the opening scene at the party, we see Aunt Moselle, played by Debbie Morgan. Her husband drives off, right? He gives Eve a coin and he drives off. That night, Eve, played by young Johnny Smollett, has a dream that Aunt Moselle's husband is unalive. She wakes up out of that dream and she holds the coin that he gave her. He ended up getting unalive. The next scene, they're at his funeral. Now, a lot of elders would call this having the gift of sight. She got the sight. Eve had the sight. We get to see right there that Eve has a spiritual gift of having foresight in her dreams. And a lot of y'all got this spiritual gift. I know you do. Some of y'all just ain't woke it up yet. But it's there. Then the next spiritual gift we get exposed to is Aunt Moselle, played by Debbie Morgan. Now, Aunt Moselle also has the gift of sight, but her gift is a little bit different from Eve's because Eve has the gift of sight when she is dreaming. Aunt Moselle has the gift of sight when she is in her conscious mind. Now, Aunt Moselle is basically the town psychic or town reader, right? She gets clients. People come to her for her readings. We get to see Aunt Moselle's house. Aunt Moselle has an ancestor altar, and on that ancestor altar, she has her husband and her previous lover who transitioned. We get to see Eve kind of playing at her ancestor altar. Let me not say playing. She was exploring her aunt's ancestor altar. And Aunt Moselle also told Eve the story of what happened to her past lovers who all ended up being unalived. Now, it's important to keep in mind that because all of her past lovers have transitioned, Aunt Moselle was kind of seen as like a black widow. And like I said, Aunt Moselle was basically like the town psychic. There's a scene where she's seeing clients, and one of the clients, she even gives her a mojo bag prescription, right? Where essentially she tells her put some lodestone, some High John the Conqueror, and a few other things in the mojo bag and keep it close to her skin. All of the things that she gave her was for justice, especially financial justice, because she had a vision that the woman's niece had spent all her money, and the woman needed financial justice. So she gave her that little juju bag to keep close. She also told her to put 5 drops of holy oil in her right palm, right? So Aunt Moselle was that girl. Aunt Moselle was that girl. But baby, Elzora was also that girl. Now, Elzora was played by Diane Carroll. She was also the town reader, but her spiritual gift was a little different. Elzora practiced divination through throwing bones. But she proved to Aunt Moselle that she was just as powerful of a seer, because in that market scene when Roz, who is Eve's mother and Aunt Moselle's sister-in-law, Roz wants to get a reading from Elzora. Aunt Moselle is like, oh, please, she's a circus act, doubting her gift. Well, when Roz sat down with when Roz sat down with Elzora, she read Roz the filter and told her, girl, you are sad. Happiness is coming in 3 years' time. You need to look to your children, and a soldier will fall on his own sword. And we know how that turned out. So all 3 of these folks were spiritually gifted, okay? And for all the folks who are interested in that, I want all of y'all to go back and look at the scenes where you can see Elzora's house and her table at the market, and just observe some of the sigils, the symbolism, the products that you can see that she had on the table and all that stuff, the juju jars and all of that. And then go look at Aunt Moselle's house when she's doing her consultation and notice some of the things that you see in the background. A lot of juju and things in there. It's good stuff. Now, before I get to the good stuff, I have to point out that at the end of the movie, we do find out that Eve has the same spiritual gift as Aunt Moselle, where she can read people by touching their hands. Okay, so Eve not only is a dreamer, but she also has the same spiritual gift as Aunt Moselle.
The stuff that you don't realize when you're watching these movies is just crazy. When you think about it, the film industry has been making a mockery of the powers that we all have inside of us. These Avenger movies, the movies they make about voodoo and people with spiritual powers, all of this stuff is stuff that we have, and they've been profiting off of it, making movies off of it, and made us forget who we really was, who we really are. This goes for everybody around the Monopoly board. We were forced to forget who we were, our name, our powers. They made it illegal to even pray, to even practice the knowledge of the old world. I've always had a very, very deep interest into anything that surrounds with spiritual powers, or anything just having powers, period. I loved watching the Avengers. I love watching anything anime. I love watching anything that has spirituality in it. That is what interests me. The fact that I'm interested in it shows that it's because a part of my soul remembers the time when we were actually doing this type of stuff. And we're coming back into that alignment. And this entire time of the forceful, forgotten knowledge that we have, it's just been for profit for them. This is another movie that I watched. Pay attention.
Another spiritual movie that I want to discuss with you guys. It came out in 2009, and it's called The Lovely Bones. It is one of my favorite movies, and it has been ever since that it came out, because it goes through things like karma, so action and consequence. It goes over a lot of the spirit realm, the astral planes, the effect emotions have, even from spirits on living people if they haven't fully moved on and passed over appropriately. It goes over how they can really affect the feelings of their loved ones if they're unaware of how they're projecting those emotions. It has spirit guides, which is really great, but it is a really sad movie, and it still makes me cry talking about this movie and even watching it. If you have seen this movie, please drop in the comments what you thought and all the little details did you pick up on in this movie. Like this one. This is near the beginning, and this is Susie. This is when she makes it out of the place that her kidnapper held her in. But it's at this exact moment that you realize she didn't make it out alive. This is her spirit trying to run home. And she passes by one of these psychic girls from school, and the psychic girl saw her. And it was that moment that she knew that Susie was also gone. So in this movie, Susie has a spirit guide that's just trying to help her to pass over. But in order to do so, she also needed to accept what had happened. But she had spent a lot of her time in the astral plane just having fun and creating and just enjoying that place for a short period of time. But she also had to accept the fact that she was murdered. And when she had to face that, one of the sayings in this movie was, from her, I had never felt anger in my life. But now anger is all I feel. And all she wanted was justice. But in this movie, because she felt such intense anger, and it does a beautiful job of going through the grief and anger stages, but her anger influences her dad, who is now blinded by that anger. And he thought he knew the person that had taken her life, and he ended up blinded by his anger, going after that person, but it turned out to be these innocent teens, and he really got hurt. And at that moment, she knew what she had done by holding on to all that anger. There's so much in this movie. I
remember seeing this movie. It made me think more deeply about passing on and transcendence. So, yeah, this is a good movie to actually watch.
Y'all, it's time to talk about Beloved. But from a spiritual perspective, let's get into it. Child, Beloved is a long 2-hour, 50-minute movie that came out in 1998, and it was based on Toni Morrison's novel Beloved that came out in 1987. Some people categorize it as a gothic, psychological horror, but really, Beloved is a very spiritual, historical film. And come on, y'all already know that anything centered in root work, hoodoo, or African spirituality at all is going to be categorized as like a stay away, scary type of movie, but that's really not what this is. See, a lot of people think that the main character of Beloved is Setha, who's played by Oprah Winfrey, but really the main character, when we looking at it from a spiritual perspective, Baby Suge. Baby Suge is the main character of Beloved, honey. See, this film is set right after the Civil War, and as we all know, right after the Civil War, a lot of our enslaved ancestors were not immediately set free. Setha plays a young woman who ran from the plantation that she lived on called Sweet Home. The reason that Setha ran from Sweet Home is because she was brutally raped by the nephew of the plantation owner. Now, it's important to note that when Setha ran for her life, she had 3 children, 2 boys, 1 girl, and she also was pregnant with one on the way. She ended up birthing that child on her way to freedom that she named Denver after the woman who helped her birth her baby. Denver is played by Kimberly Elise. And I have to say, Kimberly Elise was brilliant in the role of Denver, honey. The emotion. Y'all know how Kimberly do. Now, Baby Suge is Setha's mother-in-law who was free. So Setha ran to Baby Suge's house, but unfortunately her husband did not make it. She couldn't find him. He never turned up. And see, this is when we get into the spiritual side, because Baby Suge was known as Baby Suge Holy. She was a root worker, a conjure woman, a preacher. Now, one of the most spiritual moments in the movie is when they showed Baby Suge leading the ring shout. For those of you who don't know, the ring shout is a traditional hoodoo ceremony in which a conjure person, a preacher, or any well-respected elder from the community would gather the community together in order to praise God and welcome spiritual energy. It looked a little something like this.
Timmy, I want you to weep. Just weep. For the living. For the dead. Weep.
Unfortunately, Setha's freedom only lasted 28 days because on the 29th day, the owners of Sweet Home Plantation came to get Setha and her 4 children, but Setha refused to go down without a fight. When Setha saw the owners of Sweet Home Plantation coming to get her, she ran off to one of Baby Suge's barn with her 4 children. She attempted to unalive all 4 of the children. Fortunately, 3 of her 4 children survived, her 2 sons and her baby daughter Denver, but her little girl, who she had her neck, didn't survive. Now, after Setha unalived her child, she was detained and sentenced to hanging, but she was saved by a prominent family known as the Baldwin family. They knew Baby Suge. They loved Baby Suge, so they saved Setha. And we know all of this because throughout the entire film, Setha is telling her own story. And in that story, she's paying homage, ancestor reverence of sorts, to Baby Suge for being her saving grace. Not just saving her from enslavement, but also saving her from the hanging. Now, Setha goes on to live free with herself and her 3 children. Remember, her baby daughter Denver survived and her 2 boys. She goes on to live in a house, but that house is haunted. And this is when a lot of people start getting scared. Now, in hoodoo or root working communities, spirits are not necessarily referred to as ghosts, especially when those spirits don't mean you well. They're referred to as haints. Setha's house is haunted by a haint. And baby, that haint is aggressive. It destroys things. It throws things. The movie even opened up with the dog being thrown up against the wall, all kind of stuff. The haint is so aggressive that Setha's 2 sons end up leaving and nobody knows where they are. They run because they're afraid of this haunted house. So we don't even really get to see the sons. All we know is that Setha is presently there with herself and her daughter Denver. And baby, things start to get crazy when Paulie D, a friend of Setha's from Sweet Home, the plantation she ran from, pops up into town. Paulie D comes in, and this is when the spiritual symbolism comes in, because he sees red. Red symbolizes evil, the presence of an evil energy. When Paulie D walks in the house, he sees red, and he says, girl, what kind of evil you got here? And he ends up driving out the evil spirit energy, the haint.
Living in a haunted place.
Hush, I say. Got a tree on my back. I hate my house.
And baby, that haint reincarnated as Beloved.
What might your name be?
This is when we get introduced to the brilliant Thandi Newton, who plays the character Beloved. Now, Beloved is supposed to be the reincarnated haint. Beloved seems to have emerged out of nowhere, and she's beautiful. Now, the thing about Beloved, how they show her, is that she appears to be cognitively delayed, or what some people would term as a little slow. Something's a little off. Setha takes Beloved in and starts caring for her. Now, Setha doesn't know who Beloved is. All she knows is that she's a young girl who needs some help. Beloved ends up staying there. Now, Setha and Paulie D end up becoming very close. They're pretty much in a relationship. They start reminiscing a lot on Sweet Home, and this is where more symbolism comes in. Now, keep in mind, Paulie D just came to town, so he doesn't know much about what's been going on with Setha, but he starts bragging to everybody in the town that he wants to have a family with Setha, and his friends pull up an article like, hey, you need to know who she is. Now, of course, that scares Paulie D because that has him thinking like, oh, you unalived your child, that's why you got this crazy evil energy up in here. And on top of that, that's why you done welcomed this random girl who, to me, she's a little weird. Like, what you got going on? And not only does Paulie D think Beloved is a little weird, but he also think Beloved put a root on him. She fixed him. Why? Because one night Beloved came into the room while Paulie D was asleep, and baby, she did some things to Paulie D. He started seeing red. Remember, the spiritual symbolism of the color red is some type of evil energy. He starts seeing red after that. Well, at this point, Paulie D is already already like, what is going on? So he confronts Setha about what he heard, and that's when Setha reminds him of where they come from. And this is where the symbolism of the trees come into play. Setha has a scar on her back in the shape of a tree. Now, the tree symbolizes the root of slavery, the harsh trauma of slavery. Think about it. Setha was sentenced to be hung from a tree. She lost a lot of the people that she loved because of hangings from trees, and they beat the scar of a tree on her back after they had raped her. Despite Setha explaining why she did what she did, Paulie D is still like, this is too much for me. Still, he walks away from Setha. Setha realizes that Beloved is actually her reincarnated daughter after she catches Beloved humming a song that only her children knew. Beloved puts her head back and she sees the scar on her neck, and that's her sign that Beloved is her reincarnated daughter. So now she knows that the Haint has reincarnated into Beloved. Now, Beloved is a Haint, so she's there with the vengeance, but Setha doesn't know that. Setha starts spoiling Beloved and treating her like a queen, spending all her money, and baby, once she ran out of money and she no longer has sweets to appease her. See, let me tell you about that. In hoodoo or root worker communities, it is believed that you put out something sweet like cake or pie or fruit to appease the Haints, to appease the spirits so that they don't bother you. Well, Setha ran out of money and ran out of sweets, and that's when Beloved started acting up. She eventually rooted or fixed Setha and had Setha basically lose her mind. Denver grows older and she starts leaving the house to get work. And once again, this is where Baby Suge comes in. Baby Setha was so out her mind that she could no longer work to support her family, so Denver started going to work. Well, the community came together to support Denver and take care of Denver as well as Setha because they love Baby Suge so much. And baby, once the community found out what was really going on at that house and they found out who Beloved was, they got together for what's called a Tarian service to cast that spirit up out of there, and it worked. Child, Beloved is intense, but it's worth it. Go watch it. Much love.
She explained that so good. Thank you, the Queen Poe, because I honestly, when I watched it, I couldn't understand the plot or what was going on. Like, I think I was young when I watched it, so it was a little like traumatizing with the Beloved part and Paul, but I was just like, what is going on? That was a real good breakdown of that movie spiritually, because I didn't know what was going on. Why the woman came up and they start screaming and singing the song, and what was the people doing around dancing, and the woman was talking about weep. I didn't know this spirit. That's crazy. That is crazy. And with that, we're gonna get up out of here and get on to the next video. Thank you for watching. I hope y'all have a good rest of y'all day. And I hope this gave you a little bit of like information or understanding when it came down to these movies. And hopefully you get to, get a new perspective of things. I love y'all, and we're going to continue to go up.